took the exam back in 2018, I think. And by my calculations, I missed it by 3 questions. So this was very frustrating for someone who had been doing it for a while. So I took some time off. I always do what I always do. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Big fan of Forrester, big fan of Colin Shaw primarily. And so it came to this year, and by now the book of knowledge had been published, which I think is a huge benefit for people today that we didn't have back in 2018. So kudos to the CXPA organization. So that's a really, really helpful thing. So definitely, I heard a lot about your program, and so I definitely jumped on that, being that I've passed the CPA exam many years ago. I like the idea of having a guide, a mentor like yourself to help. So I signed up for your class, and I had a strategy. So, I had taken it before, and I talked to a lot of people. In fact, I think you set me up with one person, CCXP or CXPA. They set me up with someone that I had interviewed, just to get their point of view. And one of the things I came to a conclusion is, talking to your connection and the CXPA connection, is that I probably could improve my test taking tips. So the one thing I did do is I used AI, used AI, and I Google, test taking tips. Now, some of them I think you already shared, and I can certainly share that with you if you want to see. I actually put it on a document for someone on my team to take a look.
Yeah, we'd
So,
like to see everything possible. Yeah, absolutely, yes.
so this is what it looks like. um, Let me see if this works.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay. So, being a former accountant, I get down into the numbers sometimes. And so I calculate, you got 3 hours, you got 100 questions, divide that into that. And, so you got to get through these questions. And as you can see, this is just my own trying to be optimistic. um, and some of these, in fact, the highlighted areas are the things that you recommended, the blue highlights. And then these other ideas is what I picked up on AI. But the idea is you really need to get through these questions in a minute and a half, really. And if you're prepared, it's not really a problem. But if you have high anxiety, and I would have to argue, I have a little anxiety when I take these types of tests,
Yeah.
you're going to have a strategy for that. And so my strategy for that was, I was not going to spend more than it took to read the question. And if it didn't come to me immediately, I skipped. I didn't reread it. I didn't, because I knew right out of the gate, based on my previous experience, that it takes me a little bit of time to kind of chill. So it took me 15 minutes to chill. I probably only got 2 out of 12 of the first 12, something like that, 10, 12 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of reading the first 12 questions, something like that. And of course, right away, the questions were really long. I mean, the answers and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm stressing. Keep going, keep going. And then 15 minutes in, I started to calm down, started getting into a zone, started to, see straight. And then I started going. And at that middle part of the exam, man, I was just boom, boom, boom. I got it, I got
Excellent.
it, I got it.
Excellent.
And of course, as you recommend, everyone knows, you should be marking the ones that you don't know.
Uh-huh.
Read it once, or sometimes twice. Um, Sometimes I worked from the answer back to the question. I did that a couple of times. Read the answers and then do the question. So I got through it, even though it felt like the first 15 minutes were wasted. I had literally an hour left to go back through. I believe it was 30 questions. I think it was. I had 32, 35 questions that I marked. I had not answered. Of course, the first 12, literally first 10 out of 12 were. So I had about 30, I think 35 questions. So I went back and I went through, the first couple, from the beginning. And man, by then I read it and it was like, boom, that's the answer. Boom. I was like nailing it. At least I thought I did. And then I just kept going through. And I think based on my preparation for the exam, I think I probably only had to guess on five. So
That's
out of those
amazing.
30, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really good. If you only really genuinely felt you were guessing on five, everything else you felt very, very confident on, that's excellent.
Yeah, I said out of those 35, five I was guessing on, probably 15. I mean, it came to me pretty quick. And then the remaining, whatever, 10, it was one of those use the formula that you see in front of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we got some good tips already. I mean, one of the things that I've never heard before is you can sometimes figure out the right answer by starting with the answers and working your way backwards. So that's a
Yeah.
very interesting tip that I think people will find insightful because I've never heard anyone else say that before.
Well, where that came from is these tips in front of you. I mean, it is probably me using these test taking tips in front of you that kind of said, oh gosh, just maybe look at that. It might shave off 5 seconds. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so I worked backwards on a few. It probably, I can't remember now, but it could have been one where I had two answers that were very close. So I went to the answers and, my second time through, okay, let's start from the answers and then go back and ask the question. I don't remember exactly. So that was my strategy. Now, I don't know if, unless you have questions, I can take you to kind of how I prepared.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we felt the exam now. That what would be really good is the preparation, and then also in hindsight, once you tell us about all of that preparation, if someone could only choose like two or three of the subset, what would they be? Like what were the most critical bits? Because I know not everyone's going to have time to read the CXPA Book of Knowledge, for example. So want to hear the whole shebang, and then what you would recommend if somebody was like maybe low on time for study.
Okay, so let me stop this and share again, if that's okay.
Mhm.
So I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, um, so I've been around a while. So I put 31 days on my calendar to take the exam. And you can see the four major resources is your program. One, a lot of benefits for that. Two, the book of knowledge. Three, outside in, the book outside in. And then, of course, Chief Customer Officer 2.0. These were my four resources. And I truly think, from my perspective, and I've got a lot of experience, is this is all you need.
Very
Um,
good.
I think this is all you need. Now, it seems like a lot of work in front of you, but I'm going to share this information with someone on my team who's going to be taking the exam as well. And I'm going to try to help her prepare for that exam. And she's based in Serbia. But so you can see 31 days, she's probably going to need a little more because she's going to have to translate, English into Serbian. So it's going to take her a little longer to prepare. But I started with your information because I think your information kind of sets the stage. Your March video, you can see there, your October video, your 18 principles, your exam, your first, you offer people two exams. I also went through the CCXP practice exam. That's actually what I did first, and then I went in through all your stuff.
Quick question.
Yep.
Is that the one with the six questions on their website, or do they have another one now?
I I think they have enough. No, I think it was the 6 questions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
think now it might be different questions, but
Yeah.
it's a small one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And you can see I used AI to figure out what my test taking tips were after talking to your contact and someone else. So so we baseline, with your first exam, I baselined. Where was I? I started to started to write all your principles on index cards, which I did, but ultimately, because it's such a compact, you can, once you read it once, it takes 20 minutes the second 50, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah. Yeah.
periodically throughout the process go back, once a week at least, go back, read your principles, read your principles, because I think
Mhm.
they are very helpful. Then my plan was here. So when you do, a lot of your former students know this, but when you take your first test, and that's why you want to take your first exam test, and it's really great because it kind of gets you into your mindset, right? Because you offer people 100 questions, and you have a time associated with that, and that's what's really really great about it, because you're just it puts you into the mood there. But anyway, when you finish your exam, you have all these extra materials that you offer people to focus your efforts on. And I did that. I used your 2 week or 1 week, I can't remember exactly, but I used those resources. And I have them marked in here where I went through them. But I felt my priority was to so another benefit of going through your exam is it highlights your strengths and weaknesses. So
That's right. Yeah. Hmm.
you can put a priority around where you need to focus your studies. And so what was really interesting in that, because you offer 2 exams, and halfway through, so 2 months into my study, and I took your second exam, my two strongest areas stayed strong and my weakest areas stayed weak, but my second and third, or the other two, kind of flip flop, but they flip flop by one question better one direction, one question worse in the other direction. So it's kind of neutral in a way.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, it didn't change all that much. Um, but I think there was some consistency in that. So that helped me a little bit. Um, so I started with the book of knowledge, and I started with my two weakest areas at the time. And then I spent the weekend, you can see here, reading outside in. Then I went back to my other two book of knowledge weaknesses, and then I went to Chief Customer Officer 2.0. Went back and went through the book of knowledge. So I've covered all of the book of knowledge. Now, granted, in total, all of this was about 100 and something hours, a little over 100 hours. So I did take um, 2.5 Fridays off
Yes.
to
Okay.
go through this. So, I mean, for me, sometimes I can study 2 hours, sometimes I can study 6 hours. It all depends on how I feel that day.
Yeah.
So I took 2.5 Fridays off, and to get through all the material. And then you can see here with 10 days left, I went back to look at and I highlighted the ones I might read more than once. But I went through all your articles there, and then I took the second test 9 days out, so that basically gives you a week, right? A little over a
Very
week.
good. Very good. Yeah. I always say keep that last week. Exam should be done with 1 week to go. Yeah.
And then you see I doubled down almost on your principles.
Hmm.
By now, with the book of knowledge, I wrote all over that book, and So when I went back through it the second time in the last week here, it wasn't reading every damn, everything. I hope I can say that word, but
You say what you want.
uh,
Oh, you're all good. Yeah.
I didn't read it the same way I read it the first time. I tried to focus on the areas I felt were important for that area. Now there's a little bit of duplication in these chapters, a little bit. So it's a lot of material. You're just going to have to learn how to narrow it down on your own. I don't have an answer for that. And I did go through the outside in along the way, but I didn't read every chapter. What I did was I just read the how to. I didn't read any of the case studies. I skipped the
Yeah.
case study because that's half the chapter.
That's right. Yeah.
And I didn't go back to CCO. This is more of a leadership book, which is a great book, by the way. It's a great book for leadership. Outside in is more the practicality, kind of the programmatics, I think, even though they're programmatics and CCO too. To me, it's more of a leadership book. And so you can see I really doubled down on the principles. And this is not heavy reading in this lab, but I am reading. I I was going to pass this exam.
Yeah.
And
You're all in on it. Yeah.
yeah, so I did it, I was spending less time the last 2 weeks than I did in the front, where strategic took me 4 hours. Each of those chapters is like 4 hours long when you read it word, 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 word. By this time now I'm, hour and a half, 2 hours, just going through, like, remembering certain things that I had notated that I thought were important. So it wasn't like a high level flipping on the page. I was reading some stuff, but just not 4 hours.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can see just I went through some of my notes. I had taken notes, wrote in the both. I took some notes and I wrote in the book, and that's basically what I'm doing here. So really the last 2 days is just picking it up from time to time. Just kind of glancing through it. I'm not really hunkered down the last 2 days at all. I'm just kind of just going through it.
A big key is getting into the headspace of what are the CXPA looking for, not necessarily what do I think is really the best answer, because I know all of the nuances and little tricks here and there. I will link. Well, I won't link to it after we finish this conversation. We'll fade down, and I'll fade up to an excerpt from a coaching session that I did with David, where he got stuck on one of the questions because he knew what the right answer was, but the right answer wasn't an option because it's the way that he does things. It's very particular to his organization. So from the limited set of options that you get, you have to ask yourself, what are the CXPA looking for? And so we work through that. So if I've still got that video, I'll throw that into the end of this video, and then hopefully that will give some extra, insights to everybody watching.
I tell you that brings up a I don't know if it was your exam or what was on the CXPA. I don't remember where I saw this question, but the CCXP exam had a question. I don't know where I saw this. It was obvious for 2 of the 4 answers were wrong. There was 2 remaining, and they both could be argued as good answers. But the one I went with I answered the wrong one. All right. But if you had taken, and it was I answered I answered the question that the first part of the answer caused me to exclude it. But I said, if that first part was not, if that first part was dropped off and it was just the second part, that was the answer for me. And
Yeah.
that was, I'm like, that is the answer. But if you throw that first part in there, it kind of like takes you to the second
Yeah.
best answer.
So this brings me to something else. So there's a lot of fluff in the question sometimes. I remember I gave you that sample coaching question when we first started
Yeah.
working together. You got to decipher the fluff. Did that help? Was that useful in any way? And when you went through the
Yeah.
exam, was
Yeah.
there a lot of fluff
I,
in the questions?
Yes, yes. But again, I do think they've gotten a little better with their questions. But there's going to be 5 questions that's probably you're going to be, there's going to be 5 questions. You just throw it up in the air.
Okay, great. Well, hey, I think we covered a whole bunch of stuff. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day just to share with future students, what they can expect. It's always refreshing when they can hear from someone that's been through the experience, been through struggles. You obviously, you failed your first attempt back in 2018. I failed my first attempt back when I did it. Oh man, when was that? That was probably 2016, I think I took my first exam, and then I passed January 2017. And that's why I built the simulator, because the first time I went in, I wasn't prepared for the environment and it threw me. So I thought I want to build something where I can give people the opportunity to go through that stressful experience, go through you can't do anything for 3 hours. You're stuck at the computer and you're just going to have to take it on because there's no other way out, and it builds up that resilience, I think, which is what you need. Like you say,
Yes.
you do get a little discombobulated because you can be as calm as you want, but as soon as you hit that button, start exam, and it's the real deal, your heart rate will go up and you will feel a little stress. But
Can I add something to that? I'm sorry to make this a
yeah,
little
go
longer.
ahead.
So when I sat down, when I hit go, I was expecting to go straight into the test, but they have you on a clock answering all questions unrelated to the exam. But it was more like, here's how this whole works.
Yeah.
That threw me off. Like I said, I was stressed out, and it took me 15 minutes to chill. And once I chilled, I went through it. But that threw me off too. So just to let everybody, I was not expecting that. At least in the US, you're going to go through 5 questions about the actual technology that's in front of you. So don't, and it is on the timer. And you have to get the answers right. But if you miss it, you just pick another one, right? So something
Oh, they
like
do
that. I
that in
can't remember.
PMP exams, so they've upgraded then to start doing what some of the other exams have been doing. So they never used to do that. Very interesting. Okay, well, it's good for people to know, though. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay, that's it. Well, if you're watching, like I said, feel free to reach out to me at any time for any questions. You can get me on, you can email me at support@ccxpexamsimulator.com. You can hit me up on WhatsApp, 417-365-3034, or you can look in the description and contact David directly. He'd be very happy to share his AOI taking tips with you as well if you had any other questions. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Good to see you again, Mike.
So this question here, number 4,
Mm-hmm.
I I can I have a pro. It was a tough one to digest that I got wrong. It really struggles with me because your example is, and I see it in my results. If you look at my NPS score, I started in the low teens 13 years ago. And now I'm in world class. Well, until we split the company, I finally made it to world class about about 10 years in. So 3 years ago, we started in the second half of the semi-annual survey. 3 years ago, we crossed over into world class, according to, I think, Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look at my NPS scores, it's a 3-year cycle. It's 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 flat up, flat up. You know, 2 years flat, 1 year up, 2 years flat, 1 year up. Now some years are higher ups than others, but it's because I cannot make these changes fast enough because we don't have the resources, the people, and honestly, I have to pat myself on the back sometimes because the amount of work and things impact we're having is, I think, pretty big when you figure that I have about roughly 965 people in this organization, and half of them are in a knock, right? So they're not
Mm-hmm.
really in part of my perk. So I'm really dealing with 500 people. Although I had a meeting with them today, and I'm trying to figure out a way I can help and bring them into the fold. but it's a long-term it's a 3-year I'm starting it now. We'll get something going next year, but I won't have an impact for 3 years from today.
Yep.
You know? And so when I think in the way I work, this doesn't make sense because I'm going to survey this executive and year 1 is going to suck. Year 2, it's suck less. And then year 3 is going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. I just know how it's going to work. It's just how it works for me. So when I read this, I struggle because I do things a certain way, and it just, anyway, it just makes it tough. And I struggle because I knew it was one of these two.
The thing to remember, though, is you need to think about, because every time I got a question like this where I was in the same boat as you were, I'm like, well, it depends, though, because where I work, blah, 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 what you have to do is you have to forget all of that, and you have to say, based on this oversimplistic universe, what is the CXPA looking for? And just go with that as the answer.
Yes.